guys. I appreciate it. Y'all are knocking it out of the ballpark as usual.
Thank you.
I just wanted to comment on the, with some of the talk about the guy's article. And I just don't think that you can really put that much pressure, and I know it sounds weird, but I don't think it's fair to put that much pressure on these young recruits when it comes to, this whole 48 hours, make a decision, sign with the school. I don't think that's a fair premise. I don't think most people realize how much pressure these schools put on recruits to sign with them. If you're talking about a 48-hour window, there's so many things that can get missed within that 48-hour process, and ultimately, recruits end up going to the wrong place and the wrong school. Even from the school standpoint, I look at a player like Monterey Baldwin, who we have at Baylor, and I'm thinking to myself, with that 48-hour window, we don't get a Monterey Baldwin because he's at UIW or, somewhere else, one of the smaller schools, and he never gets an opportunity to play, for Baylor and do the things that he can do. So anyway, I'm just, I think there are other things that can fix or, other things that we should look at, but trying to say, no, let's, make them commit 48 hours and they have to stay in place for a year, I just don't think that's realistic. There's just too many X factors in that. So anyway, just wanted to call in and chime in.
Yeah, let me follow with you on this. As someone who knows this and has seen this, Andrea, if there was no signing period, if it was just they can sign at any time when they decide where they're going to go. So if they decided in August or in October or in December where they can go, they could just sign then. To me, that would make more sense with no signing day, because then at least you made your decision and then you can decide when the pressure goes off of you, as opposed to 48 hours and go.
I would say kind of yes and no, Paul, just from the standpoint of, let's take the start of senior year. For some of these guys, maybe they're group of five players at the start of senior year, but they have an amazing senior year. They've put in work, have an amazing senior year, then all of a sudden they're turning heads at the P5 level. Well, you've made a decision at the start of your senior year based on the offers that you have in front of you. So I just don't, while I'm not saying the signing period is, the best thing since sliced bread, I just think it has a purpose and it has a place, especially when it comes to, give everybody a chance to look at one another, because it goes for the schools as well. We all know a lot of colleges pull offers. Colleges will pull offers on signing day. So I think it's, it works both ways, that you just need the time to look at all of the options because, you just never know what's going to happen.
By the way, you have a hell of a son that can play football too, don't you?
I do.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
I do.
Absolutely.
Well, and take Josh Cameron as an example. If he were forced to sign early, and again, our situation was very different. We took the pressure off of him. He had, plenty of small offers and great programs, but I'm telling you now, those coaches wanted, and, they wanted him to sign right away. And because he had parents that said, no, son, you take your time, you do what you feel is best. If walk-on is the best way, well, hey, we'll believe God with you, and it's good. But, everyone doesn't have that situation. Everyone isn't coming from that type of household. Some of these kids are looking at like, man, I have to get this scholarship. I have to sign right now. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's, it puts them at a really unfair advantage that, again, just knowing what goes on the other side, I just don't think it's fair for those athletes. So.
We appreciate the feedback from your perspective, which is something we don't have. Andrea, thanks for the call. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, that's some good insight there, and that's kind of what I was saying, or part of that is kind of what I was saying just a little while ago as far as the 48-hour window. I mean, we can disagree and still agree with certain things from that article or that email, and there's certain things that you've said so far that I agree with, but yeah, like that 48-hour window, I'm with her. I just think that's putting way too much pressure, and I think you're going to get a lot of rushed decisions that ultimately end up in a guy just jumping into the transfer portal, within a couple of months of being on campus because he didn't make the right decision, because he was forced or she was forced into a time period of, you got 2 days, ready to go, better say yes or no. And I just... yeah, I don't like that. And, some people do have great guidance, and there's other guys or gals out there that have absolutely no guidance whatsoever, or what guidance they do have is not good guidance, ultimately. And so I do think that putting that extra pressure on what is already a pile of pressure is not good for the student athletes in the long run. I totally agree with that. And, look at Baylor's roster. Treston Ebner, if he had to have been forced to sign with TCU within 48 hours, he would never have been at Baylor. And we could go down the line of several guys. R.J. Sneed was committed to Ole Miss before he signed with Baylor, and Matt Rule came swooping in. Terrell Bernard was committed to Houston before Matt Rule came swooping in. All these guys who just got drafted, and some of them who, were in line to maybe be drafted next year, most of those guys were poached from other schools, and that wouldn't have been possible if they had been under a 48-hour contractual decision type of thing. And ultimately, I think Terrell Bernard probably wound up doing pretty okay for himself at Baylor, but he wouldn't have had that opportunity because he would have been under contract, so to speak.
Every kid is different. There's probably some kids that if you say you got 48 hours to decide you're coming to Alabama, and he's probably got the same 48 hours under all the other things, then he's probably going to go, yeah, go to Alabama, boom. But most kids are not like that. They need to,
But like she said, if Oklahoma says, hey, you got 48 hours and your best offer is like Texas State and North Texas and, UTSA or something, but here comes Oklahoma and you're like, boom, here's OU. And they say, okay, now you got 48 hours.
Starts
and then
a new
you decide,
clock.
and then like she said, and like I said earlier, you do that. Okay, let's say you do that in August before your senior year, and then like she said, you go out and you have a monster year, and here comes Ole Miss and Texas and Georgia and USC. But sorry, you signed with Oklahoma during a 48-hour window a couple months ago. It doesn't matter that you've blown up now and all these other schools want you. You're under contract. Like, that's not going to fly, and that wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be good for anybody. So I think having the ability to be committed but not, like, signed is fine. There are certain people that abuse it, but we know those guys. We can rattle off the names of those guys who are those stories in recruiting, and they are drops in the bucket to the thousands of people that sign every year. So I'm with her. I think that 48-hour window would be problematic for a variety of reasons.
I want to clear one thing up when I mentioned the AAU and R1. What I was mentioning, I understand the value, and Chris was saying, hey, there's billions of dollars. No, I'm just saying if we're going to end up taking away student-athletes out of the equation, then I don't, again, I know it's important, the education, the campus, the atmosphere, and I think Mike might have said something about that. But if we're going to turn them into pros, then I don't want to hear about the education. I want to hear about education and the ability to play whatever sports it might be.
Tony Altimore sent us a text and said the more he thinks about it, the more he should just let him do it. But to be an employee and to be an athlete, it has to be contingent on you being a student, and that has to be collectively bargained in. If you collectively bargain that in, then I think that you're fine. But again, collective bargaining is a really difficult thing to do.
That's a step up, brother.
Then you're also, I think giving student athletes a union is fine, except for the fact that 50-year-old people also don't know how a union works.
Guess
or
what?
18-year-old kids, it's
how much
different.
of that $70,000 you're getting from Cincinnati or from, let's say, Boise State or even USC, you're paying union fees. There's a lot of things that go with the union. It's not you getting paid and you don't pay union fees if you're going to have a union. Somebody has to do all the work legally and whatever else it represents.
Lambeau of Austin will pay that too, I'm sure.
Yeah, they probably will.
But you do realize when you start adding all this up of like how much is just not being accounted for, you know what I mean? Like how much is just like this, you want to talk about free market, that's America. Well, so is paying taxes. So is a lot of that other stuff too, but that stuff we don't talk about. We just talk about the money going out and to the athlete, but everyday Americans are dealing with a lot more hurdles and hoops and loops to have to jump through or roll around, and that might be coming their way. You want to be full-blown employees and you want to have this certain status and you don't want it to be about academics, or you want to be mini pros or whatever. All that stuff's going to come with it, but maybe that's fine. Maybe it makes it more structured. Maybe you're fine paying more taxes out of your NIL money or whatever it is. I don't know. I just hope that ultimately the student athletes are led by people with the best interest in the student athletes, and not some NIL corporate guy who pops up to try to take advantage like we've already seen, because that's probably what would happen, So hopefully that's not the case. But yeah, she nailed it on the 48-hour window. I agree wholeheartedly.
When we come